A very good morning. Whoa, you're very welcome along to a very special OTB AM. We're coming at you live from Lisbon. And I've got these three with us on the couch. Jess, how are you?
Good, how are you?
You're legitimately here. Darren, you've gone on holidays by mistake.
Yes, I've happened to holiday in the same place where you're working this week, and I have been drafted in to make a cameo appearance in front of all these people.
I know, and you've never had imposter syndrome quite like the imposter syndrome you feel right now, right?
Well, fugitive syndrome, really. I'm in hiding, to be quite honest. That's why I've come to Portugal. And lo and behold, there's a big event here, which seems to have followed me all the way over the water. So great to be here. Great to be here in the company of actual Web Summit people. What's it like? What can we expect from the next couple of days?
It's pretty intense. It's built itself up. Like Web Summit's not even 10 years old, which is incredible. And in that time, it's put itself at the fore of the tech calendar. So you kind of have to be here if you work in the tech space. Even if you don't want to be here, the people that you meet, the people you bump into, is pretty incredible. The lineup is great. What's really interesting, I don't know if you've looked through the schedule, but there seems to be a lot of talk about bigger issues than just technology this year. So things like the gender pay gap, like Brexit, like Trump's America, all that kind of stuff is being explored on the main stage, and then the tech seems to have been pushed to some of the micro stages around the place, which is interesting.
We were here a couple of years ago when Trump got elected overnight, and there was like people walking around going, what the hell happened? Because everybody went to bed thinking Hillary Clinton was going to win, and they woke up kind of going, oh, that's a new world. So as a result, you can see that they're pre-planning for the election results on Thursday morning. Thursday morning, it will be Thursday morning this time. So forewarned is forearmed.
I remember the day that Trump was elected, so waking up that morning, and again, there was a full list of panels and all that stuff, and they had to change the agenda because it's all anyone was talking about. So they had some big-name speakers talking about what's Trump's America going to do for tech, for trade, for the automotive industry. Like, it was a weird day to be here because it's all anyone could think about. There was people in a daze, and then one or two very happy people.
Yeah, it must have felt like one hell of a night in Lisbon when you wake up and see the push notifications on your phone saying Donald Trump is the President of the United States. I certainly wouldn't have believed it.
Yeah.
We're live on the internet. This is actually working. This is pretty good. Because we weren't sure, I mean, it's a tech conference. Sometimes technology doesn't work at tech conferences. That's the irony, right?
Every time, there's always issues. Even last night, so the opening ceremony was here, and I was down the road, and I had no 4G because the network was so clogged, there were so many people. That's always going to happen. It happens at sports games, it happens everywhere, but it's just not ideal when you're at a tech conference and then tech problems arise.
So who are you looking forward to seeing?
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing the two of you, obviously, doing your thing over the next couple of days.
So full of it.
Thanks, Eoin.
Well, I'm talking about like everybody else. Darren, of course. Are you doing any talks? No, unfortunately not. Neither am I. So it's not me and Darren. So it's down to the two of you. You've got huge names over the next couple of days. Someone like Stephanie McMahon is a great addition to the Web Summit this year. Just talking about how that brand has always been this gigantic thing, certainly from Darren, you can certainly speak as well on this brand that's been in our life all our lives. WWE, exactly, and has made this transition into the modern era so spectacularly well, and into different global markets and into different technologies as well. So I'm very interested to hear what she has to say about that. Paige Van Zandt as well, who we're going to be speaking to a little bit later on, and we'll bring an interview later on in the week. Just in terms of building a brand and talking about the individual brands, something which we've been speaking quite a bit about on the show recently, which is like, did Manchester United sign Paul Pogba because he's got so many Instagram followers, or did they sign Paul Pogba because he's an excellent football player? The answer is there's a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B. So I'm interested to hear what people like her have to say, because she's obviously big on that idea that, athletes can be bigger brands than sports franchises themselves.
I'm pretty excited about Villas-Boas. I think his career is very, very interesting. You could argue that maybe it peaked too soon in that he got two of the biggest jobs in English football before he was maybe ready for them. But the fact that he actually started at the very bottom of the management ladder, like he was doing some of the grunt work, the video analysis stuff and preparing clips for players, and managed to climb up all the way to become a manager, head coach. It's a pretty meteoric rise. And the fact that his career had the setbacks and kind of went a little bit off course. He went to China, but it'll be interesting to see how he plans to maybe reinvent himself at the age of 40. He has a long time yet to get it back on track.
He's become a rally driver. That's
how he did the Dakar Rally too.
He's getting his thrills from driving fast.
But getting back to the football thing, I just think that the success that he had in the very early stages of his career and the competitions he won, I think he's a fascinating guy and will probably have another big job in him. The fact that I think he was the youngest guy in his backroom team at two of the big jobs he had is phenomenal as well. And he probably maybe got them too soon to a point where I'm not sure how easy it is for a millionaire footballer to take a 35-year-old very seriously.
Did okay at Porto when maybe they weren't that rich, but at
He
the same
did,
time,
but I would imagine there were maybe less egos at Porto than when he got to England.
Yeah, and we're also obviously going to talk to Angela Ruggiero, who has been on the IOC Athletes Commission, has been a member of WADA. She's now kind of left that, so it'll be interesting to see if she's got anything to say about that. I'm going to talk with Benfica in a couple of minutes' time. I'm doing a panel with them a little bit later on about the use of technology. Luis Sau, the footballer, has just retired. He's 37, and apparently they've been using the types of data on him that has allowed him to have a much longer career because, well, it helps to know things about people.
It does, and like there are Irish companies who are developing those sensors that can feed back data to management teams, and they can change everything from, you know, when a player has their dinner, when they train, when they don't train, when they rest. Apparently, the rest time, you know, that they found when they did the first 18 months of testing, they found that players were not resting near as much as they should be, or athletes weren't resting as much. So all of that little data can give longevity to a career in pretty much every sport. It's super interesting.
Yeah, Paul McGrath invented sports science. Just don't train during the week, play at the weekend.
And Lee Keegan threw it out the window.
Yeah.
On that note, we did get a brilliant tour of Benfica yesterday from the very kind people who run the football club. Here's a little teaser.
All right, very welcome along to OTB AM this Tuesday morning. This is take two because Tommy, our producer, doesn't know how to turn on the recording equipment. I shit you not. I think we've travelled whole way around the world. Owen is technically on the lam. I don't know if you exactly know what that means. You got to look up your Goodfellas and Sopranos references. You know what I mean?
I don't know what that means, but I do know I am on the run from a very scary man. And I showed up in Portugal, and these guys followed me here. They knew where I was hiding, and they dragged me out to actually do some work. And lo and behold, here we are at Benfica.
Estádio da Luz, the Stadium of Light, home of so many famous European football nights. We're going to go in and get a tour. We're going to talk to our chief executive about the Der Spiegel stuff and the potential European Super League. Darren Cleary also is on the lam. He's technically on holidays. Owen's not on holidays. He's doing some work here, but dedication to the craft on Darren's part. He's going to be part of our show today. We're going to run you through the newspapers. We're going to talk about some of the people, some of the guests who are here and what the hell they're doing at a technology summit.
Yeah, huge names across the week. We're hopefully going to be speaking to a few of them. I think UFC is very well represented this week. TJ Dillashaw, Paige Van Zandt. We'll be speaking to Paige Van Zandt during the week as well.
You're talking down the stage to Ashley today?
Yes, we will be, and a host of other names as well throughout the day. Mike Ross is in town as well.
Have you done much surfing? Are you a surfer?
I've bodyboarded.
I think that I agree. I'm a bodyboarder as well.
Well, I have surfed once, and there's a reason why it happened only once. I went back into a prone position again, and I said to myself, never again. And I've stuck true to that mantra.
Good practice for your forthcoming gig with Tony McGregor, right? It's like, that's the same movement.
Well, it was kind of more like with Tony McGregor, I don't think I'm going to start in a prone position, get onto my knees and then start balancing. I think I will actually start in a standing position, which will be better than my surfing experience. So I can see Tony McGregor shaking in fear right now with that.
We'll bring you inside the stadium in a couple of minutes' time. Now, though, time for the newspapers. All right, very welcome along to OTB AM.
Yeah, so we'll run you through what's going on in the newspapers this morning. We can have a look at, we're going to start with the Irish Independent here. The Irish Independent front back page rather is McLean accuses FA of ignoring sectarian abuse. This is obviously the ongoing Poppy saga, which you kind of felt that maybe now that Nemanja Matic come out and pointed out that the British Army through NATO carpet bombed his country when he was a child, so therefore screw you and your Poppy lads, that maybe some of the attention would have come off James McLean, but that hasn't happened just yet.
Yeah, good luck finding any international footballer in the Premier League who comes from a country that can find some sort of history that doesn't involve some sort of bad blood between themselves and the British. So, yeah, like this does support the notion that is this a specific James McLean thing? Is it a specific anger and a hatred towards coming at it from the Irish angle, or is it hatred towards people who hate the Poppy or just don't want to honour the Poppy? Like, it will be interesting to see what the Nemanja Matic fallout is, because clearly James McLean gets it in both barrels every single year. Fair play to him for keeping it up. I mean, it's something that could probably wear you down throughout the years, but he's still as vociferous as ever, it seems.
It's got to a ridiculous point, though, the fact that a weatherman goes on ITV and forgets to wear the poppy and he has to issue an apology to the whole country because he didn't wear the poppy. It makes absolutely no sense that you put these guys under such severe pressure. And it's almost as if when McLean does it, it's amplified. And the idea that he should suffer in silence and not have a right to reply. And the fact that his club actually apparently, according to reports, warned of his responsibilities. You got to back your player in that situation, particularly if he's being abused by his own fans. We've all seen the videos knocking around Twitter and knocking around Facebook. The idea that he should just sit and take it because he's decided of his own free will not to wear a poppy, that the consequences should be death threats and people abusing you, is absolutely insane. And this idea of emblems, we attach meaning, and there is obviously great meaning to the poppy, but it is a charity at the end of the day. It's a charity endeavour. And the idea that you would give so much coverage to one charity it seems very, very skewed. And I'm sure a lot of people would like to have special emblems on their jersey celebrating causes close to their heart.
But mobs decide that emblems have power, not like a collective flowering of intelligent thought. It's like the mob dictates that the poppy is now the be-all and end-all, or the swastika, or something else, or whatever it is that people are going to rally behind. Like those pictures yesterday of people with swastikas and poppies on at the same time. It was like, it's precisely the point that we've reached in modern political discourse, where this makes some sense. You can see how fascists have decided that they are going to wear the poppy and will also have the tattoos that the pictures were doing the rounds on Twitter yesterday. Like it's a coherent thought pattern for them, and at that point, then you start to realize this poppy thing has gone way too far. Like at some point, as you say, it's supposed to be a charity. Step back and go, well, we're not going to have it on the fantasy football Premier League jerseys for the week. That's like, we haven't got a programmer to code in the hardwire poppies. Like, do you have the option? I don't know, I don't play fantasy football anymore. Did you have the option not to wear the poppy in your team this week?
I wouldn't imagine you did. And Jaron, you mentioned the mob. They're not unruly guys with pitchforks anymore. They're developers who feel like they're bullied into, actually, if we don't have a poppy on the fantasy football jersey, will we get blowback? So people are just terrified of doing anything remotely offensive, and the fact that they've attached such meaning to it, to not wearing it, absolutely, if you want to wear it, if you want to honour people who passed away in war, there is absolutely no issue with that. But at the same time, it's a very, very different symbol to McLean. He doesn't attach the meaning that most of the people proudly wear the poppy do. He attaches it to the what happened in the part of the country he lived in when British soldiers shot and murdered a number of people from his estate. So it's very, very different the way he views that emblem and the way others. And the idea that he should be forced into wearing it or should have to defend himself every time he decides not to wear it. Yeah. It's at a point where it's insufferable now. And the fact that his club, instead of backing him and siding like Dave Whelan did at Wigan, look, if you don't want to wear this, you've made a very, very reasonable argument as why you don't wear this, it's fine. But the fact that Stoke warned him about his responsibilities to the game because he used a couple of bad words on Instagram, it beggars belief, really.
Well, that is the nadir when we're talking about Dave Whelan as the forward-thinking sort of advocate for non-poppy wearing footballers.
Let's move on. The other back-page story in the Indo before I get to the Examiner. Kildare concern is Flynn undecided on his 2019 availability. It was like that shimmering moment of, oh, we're going to be great, Kildare, it's going to be fine. And now they're having a bit of an off-season from hell where several of their team are not ready just yet to commit to what's happening in 2019. Flynn's in college, and it sounds like he might be back in time for the start of the proper season in championship terms, but you would just like them to go, yeah, come on, we're unified now, everything's grand, there's not going to be any stories coming out.
Yeah, you've lost your under-20s manager as well, it seems, over the course of the last couple of weeks, whether or not he's going to be brought back into the fold. Niall Kelly as well is going to be missing a big section of the early part of the season if you include the league. It all points to a pretty difficult start to 2019 for Cian O'Neill after what was, I would say, like only you can speak out of the three of us, sure. I would have said it was a successful summer for Kildare GAA. You had a moment that unified the whole county. Yeah. Granted, that's probably not going to happen again this year or next year because that was just such an insane moment. But you know, the result against Mayo itself should drive things on. Being part of the Super 8s should be part of the narrative that says we're under-20s All-Ireland champions. We should be able to get back there and cement our position and maybe win a Super 8s game next year. Suddenly you're looking at their team and you're like, they might regress next year.
And if you want to argue against the introduction of a B championship with the fact that no player dreams of beating a team in a B championship, you had that wonderful moment in Newbridge where they pulled off what most saw as something unthinkable and incredible. And it just again shows why the championship, while it may not be perfect, still has that potential moment of glories for what our so-called weaker counties.
Well, they're a Division 1 team.
What are you talking about?
Yeah, but
now this is patronising. Look at that. Look,
that's not
that's what's wrong with the
good old Kildare
championship.
winning a game at home just because you don't know where you were.
did you think it was
never been there?
Did you think it was unthinkable? That
They
Everyone-
were
unthinkable.
outsiders. It wasn't completely unthinkable. It was like, you know, they've got really good players. I understand you don't know any of their names, Darren, because you know you're too busy going, the Dublin B team is the second best team in the country. I get it. Let's move on very quickly before this takes a nasty turn. The Examiner front page this morning, because we are Irish Catholics, they turn a blind eye. James McLean not leaving anything to the imagination.
See, that's the interesting point. That's the thing I do wonder, and we will see it now over the next couple of days when we see reaction to Nemanja Matic. Is this to do with James McLean's nationality? Is it to do with his religion, with a certain section of the footballing public? I think, as Darren says, the whole lack of support from his club just comes from pure ignorance. It comes from a pure lack of knowledge about where James McLean came from and, in his perspective, what the British Army represents. I'd be very interested to know what a lot of the fans think when they talk about James McLean as an Irishman, whether that all feeds into the idea that, you know, he doesn't wear the poppy, also he's Irish, also he's Catholic, I hate him. And that may seem like a very drastic thing, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was a large cohort of supporters who genuinely feel that way. And I think there's a nub of truth in that quote from James McLean.
Well, it will be very interesting to see what the response to Nemanja Matic is, and I mean, it doesn't prove it one way or another. But if Matic is just like, oh yeah, fair enough, well then that'd be a bit like, hang on a second, what?
There's no way of proving any of this, but it's actually very interesting that I saw this week, because I'm just reading Eamon McGee's book at the moment, or the book about Eamon McGee, the boxer. And it's like in the first chapter, it's kind of written for an international audience, so the author is describing the Troubles, and he describes the amount of British military presence in Northern Ireland from the 60s onwards, and he says, to put it in context, there was X amount of soldiers in Northern Ireland, and there was less than half of that amount of British soldiers during the Balkans, during their conflict there. So it was interesting that in the very week when I read that Nemanja Matic comes up and speaks about that very conflict and his own view of the British soldiers.
I mean, the old imperial empire is the attitudes that pervade that are still alive and well, because a lot of it I would see down to being, how dare this Irishman who lives in England and makes money from the Queen's crown, how dare he decide not to support our emblems, how dare he have the temerity to speak out and to not do what we tell him he should do.
Let's see if they say the same thing about Matic. Maybe Matic is a better footballer and his team need him a bit more. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see if that matters.
It's sad, but it's probably very true.
Well, football fans, I mean, they care about their team winning, and some football fans, in fairness, not all football fans. Sports Tuesday in the Irish Times this morning. Pragmatic Ringrose ready to step it up to the next level. Terry Thornley's column is Schmidt continuing to strengthen the squad's depth. And then Tadhg Byrne was also out for media, and he's saying that, the headline there is Byrne shows big match temperament. We didn't talk about Tadhg Byrne a couple of weeks ago, pointing at one of his opposition members when he was playing for Munster going, scumbag! And the ref going, what? And he's like, he was trying to break my fingers.
Oh yeah, in the Champions Cup game.
Yeah, fair play to him. Calling it out and going right in front of the referee, mic'd up, catching it, and like, yeah, good man, Tadhg Byrne. Don't be taking that crap from them.
Yeah, it was that was an interesting moment, an interesting pulling back of the curtain. I'm interested as well in the kind of view of Gary Ringrose at the moment, in terms of how vastly different we're speaking about him to how we were speaking about him a couple of years ago, and literally just 2 years ago. That, of course, we all knew that he was an outrageously talented rugby player, and that hasn't changed. But how we speak about him as a person now, it's like Gary Ringrose, yeah, he's whatever age he is, 23 years old. He's in the leadership group now. It's like Johnny Sexton wasn't there at the weekend, Peter O'Mahony wasn't there at the weekend, Rory Best wasn't there at the weekend. Who steps up? Who do you now view in that leadership sphere? And straight away, I'm picking out Gary Ringrose's name from that lineup, and it is crazy to think that he's already at that stage. Future Ireland captain for sure, you'd imagine.
Well, it comes down to the way the academies are structured nowadays, and at the onset of the professional era, they weren't equipped to get players ready to be at that level. So when Ringrose was at 18, 19, 20, he's played some pretty big rugby games. He's been in a professional environment for a couple of years. He understands the trials, the tribulations, and he has an idea of what is required of leadership. So I think nowadays, because of how well structured the academy systems are, players are better able to deal with responsibility at a younger age, because a lot of it is down to not just how they're taught to play the game, but how they're taught to balance their life and balance their attitude afterwards. I think there's more personal development, it seems, in rugby academies in the likes of Leinster and Munster than there would be in maybe the soccer equivalent. There seems to be more staked in the person and developing them as much as developing the player. And I think what it leads to is when you get guys like Ringrose at a very young age, you can earmark the fact that he is mature well beyond his years because of that.
He's still at college, I think, or is he just finished?
Just after finishing up, I think. It's certainly something that he was like. It's interesting.
It was something ridiculously hard that like needed 600 points. It was business, French, and law and French or something.
Yeah, well, I think 525 was the points the year he got that course. So I'm not sure how much above 525 he achieved. Maybe he was looking at it as like, if I don't absolutely destroy 525 and get close to 600, I'm a failure. It's probably the way he thinks, and he's obviously doing really well in that.
Moving on, Stoner McGregor. Who do you think this is about? Your buddy. UFC star thanks boxer Tyson for letting him try out his marijuana. That is Mike Tyson and Conor McGregor sharing a spliff.
He thanks Mike Tyson for letting him try it. Is this sort of like Elon Musk thanking Joe Rogan for allowing him to try a spliff? Was this sort of an awakening for Conor McGregor? Conor McGregor's sceptical, but I'd be surprised if that was the case.
Well, anyway, I think you're in enough trouble with the McGregor family at the moment, Owen. We're actually over here for a warm weather training camp. That's what's going on.
No, as I say, I'm here hiding, and you just managed to find me.
It's going to be great when the official fight announcement is made on this stage later this week in front of 900 people, and people will stop asking, "Is this real?" That has been the prevailing question over the last.
It's been very annoying. It's almost like people don't think that you could actually get in a boxing ring with a 59-year-old man who's twice your size and batter him on. It's like they're not taking you seriously.
Yeah, like look at me.
A bit of a wake-up call for you, right?
Well, yeah, I've been asking myself the same question. I ask myself, is this real in the mirror 5 times every morning? And true enough, we are still living in this reality where this thing may or may not happen.
It is real. You've been getting texts as well, surely. You must be at a point where your phone keeps beeping to a point where you're just not going to reply to them.
Well, exactly. Well, that's just my life in general, Darren. It's just gone on to a whole new level over the last week.
What was the moment you knew it had gone beyond the internet realms and the Twitter?
Well,
the moment where you're like, okay, this is real.
Yeah, when you see the father of a world megastar walking off his yacht with an espresso machine in his hand and says with the caption on Instagram, "Game on, Mr. Sheehan," then you know it's real. Then the sweat starts to go down your neck, and you're like, I'm in way too deep here.
Donald McRae obviously is a genius as a journalist, does most of the good one-on-one interviews that happen nowadays in the print media. In The Guardian today, he's got an interview with Sir Bradley Wiggins, Sir, the child of an empire, obviously, Sir down on bended knee with a sword in the palace.
He's not my sir.
Well-dressed, Sir Brad. That's how that works. You go down on bended knee before another human being so they can bequeath to you and your family the title of Sir, because that's the only way anybody would ever respect you.
It's the only way to actually say, you win at life.
Bradley Wiggins, I'd have had more rights as a murderer. I only asked for a fair trial. So maybe he should have murdered somebody. I mean, that's the logic that Sir Brad has here.
I'm not sure whether you've been asked on to a lot of talk shows, and I'm not sure would he have a Skoda sponsorship if he'd killed somebody. I'm not sure. Like I can't really go that far.
Not great brand
confirm
values.
That, but maybe he's exaggerating it a small bit.
And then there's one other quick story that we just wanted to cover right now. It's by Colin O'Connor in The Examiner. Dublin schoolboy football now more akin to an MMA event. Dublin and District Schoolboy League officials have issued a stark warning that a serious injury or a fatality will be inevitable if violent incidents in their games remain unchecked. Football bosses reveal that subs, managers, coaches and several spectators have been involved in mass brawls, with 7 matches under the control abandoned in the past 6 weeks. So it's not just on the fields of Kerry GAA and Tyrone GAA and Cork GAA. It turns out that Irish males like to batter the shit out of each other.
I've not actually seen any of these videos. Does it say that there is evidence of this doing the rounds? Because I actually am surprised to hear that this is a prominent thing. Of course you might have one incident here or there, But I genuinely was of the belief that it was a GAA cultural thing because you had the tribal nature of it all. You were going out representing your parish, going out to batter the neighbours, figuratively and literally as well. And clearly, it's not just a GAA thing. I'm actually really surprised to see this. So, is it just Dublin? Is it a nationwide thing? Is it just the
DDSL, so Dublin District Schoolboys League?
Yeah, a couple of Dublin stories have come out. I haven't seen any of the videos, so I'm not really sure. But from being on sidelines of those matches, they can get a bit mouthy. They can get overly aggressive with parents, get quite angry, and the feel-good spirit can be quickly abandoned if the referee makes a call that goes against players. And particularly at that age, in soccer they are trying to make ways of dealing with it. Like they've got this silent sideline where if you start shouting and screaming, someone will come up and ask you to leave the ground, and if you don't leave the ground, the referee abandons the game.
But think about it, like, so angry, aggressive, foaming at the mouth parent comes and shout. Who is actually going to be the person whose job it is to go over and say, excuse me, sir, I wonder if you would mind maybe toning it down a little bit?
Well, it's on the manager.
Frightening the children.
There's a bit of buy-in to this silent sideline thing where all the stakeholders will agree that they will not tolerate this, and the first person to break the silent sideline will go up. A manager from whatever team, depending on, if it's a father of the kid on my team, I'm the manager responsible for saying, back in your lane, or if it's vice versa. So the manager will go up and say, look.
But the parent's an absolute scumbag is my issue here. And I'm not saying that there are scumbag parents in rugby and GAA and in soccer. So you're asking somebody to take responsibility for the scumbag behaviour of somebody else.
But they don't get to ruin it, because we talked about the GAA issues and how you'd be able to curb them, and I think zero tolerance is the only way about it. So if you call a game off every time a guy opens his mouth, you'll find that people will stop opening their mouth or stop coming to games. I don't think that it's an idea that you can't do anything about it just because the person might be unsavoury or they might be a bit of an asshole. Of course you can do it. I mean, a group of 30 adults don't have to sit there and watch one screaming his head off at children.
But the thing about scumbag...
there's a responsibility there to go up and say, here, mate, relax, walk away.
Yeah, I mean, you will get your head punched.
But, Jared, there's 30 people there. You're
and 29 people are going to watch one person punching the other head off the person. That's how it works.
You have little faith in...
I do. That's what group dynamics are. Oh, look at that guy beating that other guy up. That was some punch. Maybe if we'd all intervened. Well, it's too late now. I'm going to be the next one in. And he's going to...
No, when everyone gets involved, then it's a GAA, bro.
Well, I'd have less faith in a soccer situation than in a GAA situation there. So if you're a scumbag parent, say if you're a scumbag parent and you're inclined to go out and fight, are you going to be filled with a little bit more vitriol as a soccer parent because you're looking at your kid and you're like, this guy or this girl is going to become a professional athlete down the line. This person is going to support our livelihood, be extremely famous. Our family is going to earn money as a result of this person's success. Whereas in the GAA, it's mere representation of one's parish. But maybe that's a more powerful thing.
You're greatly overestimating the mental capacity of the people who shout and scream at 8-year-olds. Like, there's no way that anything beyond, I'm angry now, so I'm going to make noise with my mouth, goes through their head at that moment.
That's a very good point.
It's OTB AM live this morning from Web Summit. If you want to leave a comment for us or if you want to abuse us roundly, feel free to do so. You can get us on Twitter at OffTheBallAM. We're also streaming live on Facebook.com/OffTheBall or on YouTube.com/OffTheBall as well. And we'll get to all your comments and questions a little bit later on. We've got some Web Summit themed content coming your way in a couple of minutes' time, because obviously content is one of the buzzwords. Darren's been studying his buzzwords. You can check out his Instagram feed for a crash course on how to network properly, if that's your thing. But we have actually been doing some work here. We were out at the Estádio da Luz yesterday, the home of Benfica, one of the iconic European football venues. Here's how we got on. All right, so you might have noticed that we're standing beside Eusebio, which means we are still at Benfica. One little tidbit of information that I got was that this is where the original Estádio da Luz was. This was the centre circle for the original one. That's why they put Eusebio here. Obviously, basically turned the club from, a run-of-the-mill club to one of the greatest clubs in world football. Yeah. What did you learn?
I learned that Eusebio is the greatest Portuguese footballer of all time. No, there's definitely not any other glaring examples of good Portuguese footballers. Eusebio is the go-to Portuguese football. We also learned a thing or two about the eagle on the top of the crest, as I'm sure you'll know about the Benfica crest. They actually fly around the stadium before every single game. Victoria, 15 years old now, an eagle. She had her birthday last week. They had a big celebration for her, and there's a big celebration every time she flies around the pitch. And a couple of times she wandered off, flew away from the stadium.
All right, back.
And another time she landed on the crowd. They ended up winning that game 5-1. So it's a good luck story, I think, if she doesn't do what she's supposed to do. But basically, an eagle flies around the stadium. It's better than Crystal Palace, where an eagle just flies from one end to the other. So in terms of eagle football knowledge, my brain is stacked right now.
All right, so while he was filling his head with all the good eagle information stuff, I was talking with the Chief Executive of Benfica. Here's how that chat went. All right, we're in the office here of the Chief Executive of Benfica, Domingos Oliveira. Thanks so much for having us and for giving us a bit of a tour of the stadium. I'm always interested when you have responsibility for a brand like Benfica, how much you lean on the history and how aware you have to be of the history, and yet at the same time how you must try and create something new and different. How do you manage the tension between the past and the future?
Well, it's a very interesting topic because we have a big and beautiful history. We have more than 100 years, and in the past we lived very strong stories. We won the Champions League twice in the 60s. And there's a lot of people who still remember that, and they always talk about the big Benfica. Now, if you project Benfica only considering the past, I think you will fail the objectives for a brand like Benfica. So what we're trying to do is to keep the memories alive, and that's the reason why we develop a big museum with all our history. But at the same time, to have a team of group of people who are always trying to put Benfica in, I would say, not the next century, because the next century is too far, but I say in the next 10, 20 years. And part of it is projecting Benfica at the international level. So we are today a very important club in Portugal. We want to become a very important brand outside Portugal, especially in China and the States, and to have some influence at European level.
All the more interesting that you say this in light of the stories coming out this week about the potential for a European Super League. You know, I'm sure you're aware of those conversations happening. You're probably in some of those conversations. So what's your take on it? What do you think is the future? Is a European Super League inevitable?
Well, as you probably know, I'm also a board member of the European Club Association. So I would say that I have to be a little bit careful about the comments I will make on that. The discussion we're having at the European Club Association don't talk about a Super League. Okay, I understand the interest of some clubs for a Super League, but I think that we will miss the long history at European level between for teams like ours, like Ajax that will play in 2 days from now, like Anderlecht, and this is just to mention some very important clubs at the European level that eventually would not be part of this Super League. So we don't like the idea, as Benfica, I'm just talking as Benfica, we don't like the idea. We understand the financial impact for those big clubs, but I think that at European level we will lose a lot of the basis that were the foundation of the European football.
And the foundation of the sport, which is the connection that the fans have with the club, because it represents their locality against the club down the road. That's exactly what makes football magic.
And that's the reason why, for example, when we say we want more European matches, less domestic matches, we are not saying we don't want domestic matches. Because if you ask Benfica fans who are their rivals, they will talk about Sporting or Porto. They will not talk about Barcelona or Real Madrid. And that's, again, the foundation of football. It's playing with teams in your country. Now, if those clubs were eventually preparing that, and I haven't seen any confirmation of that, but those clubs will lose their impact at domestic level, I think that they will lose the basis for their development.
And football will suffer, it seems, to anybody outside, that if you don't have the bonds that brought the teams together in the first place, if it becomes a manufactured league, then why do we go? It's just entertainment.
I think that the best example of this kind of leagues is the MLS, okay, where you don't have promotion or relegation. And I will be in Miami in 2 weeks from now, discussing the opportunities in terms of development of the football in the States. But I think that this basic idea of not having promotions and relegation affects their performance and the competitiveness of the American football. I don't think that European fans would like to see the same situation in Europe.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. One last thing I wanted to ask you about Benfica. Obviously, you've had such incredible success with buying players, scouting players, turning local players into global superstars of the game. At some point, do you hope to be able to keep on hold of those players and build a super team yourselves? Or is that just the nature of the game, the way it has gone?
Well, I think that 90% of the European clubs are selling clubs, okay? So you have most probably 10, 12, 15 clubs who today can say that they don't need to sell players in order to keep their financial in a good situation. In our case, we saw a big change in the last, I would say, 10 years. Until, I would say, this season, it was mandatory for us to sell 1 or 2 players in order to balance our P&L. This season is the first season where, in fact, we sold some players, but I would say that those were not the most important players. Guys like Rúben Dias, who is a central defence, 20 years old, trained and nurtured in Benfica for the last 10 years. We got some offers from outside Portugal, and we decided to retain the players. So the kind of development that we have today in Benfica, increasing revenues and allowing to keep these players because we give them a best salary is extremely important.
So João Felix, last night when this piece airs, you signed to a new deal. That's the type of deal that you want to see the superstar 18-year-olds kept for as long as you possibly can.
Yes, exactly. João Felix is a very good example. Recent signature, but Rúben Dias, Jadson Fernandes, etc. I think we have fantastic group of players that were developed inside Benfica for the last 10 years. Guys like Bernardo Silva left the club. We want the future Bernardo Silvas to stay in the club. We're
at Web Summit, obviously. That's the reason that we're here. It's been interesting to hear you talk about having a technology background and coming into football with that technology background, and it's been important for you, you've said, to inject a technological approach to the science of the football over the last decade and a half, and you're beginning to see the benefits of that, it seems?
We see that, and in fact, in the Web Summit, we will show the example of Luizão, which is a player who joined Benfica 15 years ago, and he just retired 1 month ago. And he's the best example of a player who says, without technology, I could never be the player I was recently. So technology helped a lot of players to develop themselves, not only at technical level, but also in terms of human performance. What we try to do today with technology is to get more information and to try to develop predictive models that allow us to know when a player will be at his highest level in terms of human performance, or eventually if he's at risk in terms of injuries or something like that. And really, it made the difference in the last 10 years.
I'm really looking forward to that bit. Domingos, thanks so much.
Thank you very much. Pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, so that was pretty interesting. When we walked in, he was actually literally signing the contract that they were talking.
When you look at the list of former players, one of whom bumped into us yesterday.
Rui Costa. Let's just drop a name right there. Rui Costa. And Rui Costa approached us. We didn't approach him. And I told a joke, and Rui Costa laughed at it. So I'm sorry.
You have to tell the joke.
It wasn't a joke at all. I just said something and he laughed. He probably just didn't understand my accent. So.
What was it? What did you say?
He was just asking if we were playing in the game. Apparently there's some sort of Web Summit game that we haven't been invited to.
Yeah.
But there exists a football game, and yeah, he's asking us if we were playing, and I made some quips I can't even remember right now, but it was clearly a good one.
I think it was along the lines of, oh, we'd be too good for that anyway, or something ridiculous.
No, Tommy told me last night, apparently you said, you'll have to wait a different time to see our silky football skills.
There was crappiest joke ever.
I didn't use the word silky.
I know. I'm paraphrasing.
You know, I'm embarrassed for myself.
But we did actually, when we were talking about what we would end up talking to Benfica about, the list of former players around European leagues that came through this place is fairly sensational.
Yeah, you go through the tunnel towards the pitch, beside the dressing rooms and beside the press conference walls, and they've got pictures of all these guys down through the ages. So you've got your Eusebios, you've got your Lusaos, but then, as you say, the people who've gone on to perhaps greater things at other clubs, the likes of David Luiz, the likes of Giovanni of Hull, who had actually completely forgotten how to play for Benfica. Like, you've got the likes of Renato Sanchez, who quite recently is starting to do good things once again back in Germany. Angel Di Maria was a former Benfica player. But the person that I think that they're most proud of is Bernardo Silva. That, you know, the people who are giving us a tour around, very passionate Benfica fans, were saying to us that really this guy is the next Messi in our view. And it's like, you start to think, well, would we not have kind of seen that on a more concrete level so far? But the fact of the matter is that his development over the last 12 months in the Manchester City jersey has been quite astonishing, as in forcing his way into a really competitive side, and he's gone forward, he's improved game after game after game. And the thing that kind of brings him the most pride about Bernardo Silva is that he was produced in their very academy, which they're quite proud of as well. It was only properly set up 4 years ago. It's a vast empire of different pitches, training facilities, and even accommodation for some of the younger players should they need it. Like, this is a club moving in the right direction. You were speaking to them about the European Super League. Well, if such a future does lie for football, that there will be an elite band of football clubs, well, Benfica are doing everything they can to be in that band.
A reminder, OTB AM is live with Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a choice of over 20,000 quality trade products. Eoin did get a tour he was talking about there, so here's how that went.
Well, so I've got to talk to them about what's coming up on the gig tomorrow. So, Eoin, welcome to one of the cathedrals of European football. It feels just like Killarney, eh?
Well, exactly. Look at this, the Adidas sign synonymous with Killarney, of course. It's an amazing structure on the outside. Funny enough, there is the structure right there.
She said go down to the right, right? Tomatoes, how are you?
Eoin, please meet you.
Can we offer you coffees?
I'm okay, thanks very much.
If I might suggest, you want to do a tour?
Yeah, it will.
Okay, great. But before we have the meeting,
yeah,
with Mingos and Luizão to prepare the panel for tomorrow.
Perfect.
Your team can start to look
to do the tour. Yeah, okay.
My colleague Carl is coming.
Okay.
While we do the meeting, they start to see where they want to do the footage.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So we're going to head down to the pitch and see the playing surface. Of course, it's going to be used on Wednesday night, and we're going to get out there just before it gets dark. We're going to see the dressing rooms. We're going to see the museum. We're going to check this place out. Look at this. Look at this.
Beautiful.
It is beautiful.
Thank you.
I think it's pretty sweet, isn't it? It's an amazing kind of. You can just imagine the place when it's absolutely full.
Victoria, she's the one who flies around the stadium before all matches here in the stadium. 5-10 minutes before the match starts, she starts to fly on the top of that stand, BTV stand.
So it's fair to say that Victoria is the most famous eagle in Lisbon.
Absolutely. And here we have our Eusebio, our big king. That guy in Benfica won 11 championships, 5 Portugal Cups, 1 Champions League in 14 years, amazing. 638 goals in 614 matches. Amazing record. And was the first Portuguese player winning the Ballon d'Or in 65, playing in the Portuguese club. Amazing.
Amazing. We were just chatting there about 2004, about the amazing atmosphere here, and we were reliving happy memories like England getting knocked out of a major tournament, and we remembered all the celebrations we had when David Beckham missed that penalty.
Tail on that with a blast at the end to make sure that we know what's going on. So at Sportsfile Steve is with us. Steve McCarthy, how are you?
Very good.
So you were wandering around there taking photographs and we were like, hang on a second, you've got some interesting stories to tell. So this is a tech conference, and you're a photographer. I should stress that if anybody has seen any pictures of Khabib staring down at Conor McGregor, just about to... Did he spit at him at that stage? Or I don't know when the spitting happens. But they're your photographs that went around the world. ESPN picked that up.
Yeah, that's right. So we were in Vegas there about 2 or 3 weeks ago now. And it was a bit of a crazy week. So you go out there for a week, you do all the build-up and all that kind of stuff. And there's so much hype around it, especially... And a fight like that suits Vegas because it's a crazy city anyway. But then when you come to the fight night, you're expecting this big... amazing fight. It wasn't as exciting as what we were hoping for. But yeah, so at the very end of the fight, obviously our angle is, being an Irish agency, is Conor. So when he got beaten in the corner, our focus was on him. And it was so surreal to see him just lying there as such a beaten docket at that stage of the fight. So I stayed on him, and then all of a sudden you could see something happening with Khabib. He was kind of coming towards my corner, but I wasn't really that interested because it was still Conor was our story. And then that's when it all kicked off. You could see the gum shield going, thrown, and then next thing he just jumps out over the cage into where I was standing. And you just didn't know where to look then after that, because it was just happening everywhere. It was you were always that split second behind. So when he jumps, you try and get into that melee, but you're being pushed back, and there's security pushing you and getting digs here and there. And then you hear, oh, Conor's been hit. And then you jump up in the octagon and you're back in there, and then you've missed that. And then you go back down again, and it's just mayhem everywhere. Absolute mayhem there. And you just didn't know where to look, and it took so long to just come down from it and say, wow, what was that? What have I just witnessed? And it's something that'll be spoken about for so long to come.
Presumably you were in the line of danger as well. If he had jumped out a different part of the octagon, like a man could have gone flying over your head.
Quite easily, he could have landed on top of me. And it was, and because when it happened, then you've just security comes from everywhere. So there's no holds barred at that stage. All they're interested in is the fighters, and they're the guys that stand out because they know who they're looking for, whereas everybody else is just extras. So it doesn't matter who you are, you're being pushed. And it's elbows and it's digs and all that kind of stuff. But it was mayhem there.
Is that the most chaotic thing you've ever covered in your career?
Well, there's been a couple of GA games now that have been up there over the years.
Which ones?
Oh, I definitely remember one. And I'll never forget. It was Cross McGlen. We're playing in Cavan against Castlebar Mitchells, and I remember Castlebar beat them. It must have been an All-Ireland semi-final. They said it was in Cavan that night. It was a Saturday night, and all hell broke loose afterwards. And I tell you, that was rough.
On the pitch?
Yeah, right. On the pitch. And it happened. The pitch was whatever about the pitch. We're kind of used to seeing that, but what happened around the dugout area, that was serious. And unfortunately, it's my job to tell that story, and my nature is to get closer to it and not run away from it. So you end up inside in the middle of it, and then you realise, oh, I'm too close to this. I probably brought a lens that was a bit too wide, and I got right in the middle of it. But yeah, that's one I'll never forget.
Well, at least it is your job to take those photos, because whenever we put up a video of any GA brawls, people are like, put away the phone. Why are you ratting us out here?
Exactly, yeah. Look, well, we can turn a blind eye to it if that's what you want, but it happens at the end of the day, and you have to show it. And then people turn, oh, why are you photographing us? Well, don't do it, and I won't photograph you. Like, that's my attitude towards it.
Just to go back to the Khabib, to that moment, are you looking at everything through the lens, or do you kind of take a glance? You kind of try and look.
You're always looking through, because if you see it with your eyes, it means you've missed it. So you're always looking through the lens, and that's why I suppose the initial thing of Khabib throwing the gum shield back out towards Conor's corner, I'd kind of missed it because I was still focused on Conor. That's our market. So. It's just out of the corner of the screen that I could see, okay, something's kicking off here. He's getting too close to me, and then that's when he jumps. So yeah, you're still looking through the camera at all the times. And then when he jumps out, you have to drop that camera, pick up the next one because they've come so close to you. Yeah.
It's mad because it sounds like you're a little bit almost disappointed now from this distance, but the next morning you wake up and ESPN have flashed your photograph around the world. So you must be relatively happy with what happened.
Yeah, definitely, because it's a gamble for us as an agency going to fights like this. You're spending a week there and all that, but it just moved it from being a fight that was going to be on the Irish sports pages, maybe buried inside there on a Monday morning, to turning into this global story that was on the front pages and the back pages. So, once it all sunk in, it's like, this is going to be big. This is definitely worth it. These pictures are going to be floating around for years to come.
Yeah.
And I'm no doubt when the cases come up in Vegas soon that they'll be churned out again, and they'll keep, and before the next fight, before Khabib's next fight, and before Conor's next fight, they'll be churned out. And if there is a rematch, there's going to be great value in these over the years. But yeah, initially we're disappointed with the way the fight went, but then you think, oh no, this is bigger than anything that could have ever happened.
This is a tech conference, and you were literally walking past the stage there taking photographs, and we were like, hang on a second, this is a good opportunity to talk to you about. So is there stuff here that you're actually legitimately interested in? Or is there stuff that's relevant to you here?
Yeah, there's a few bits. I suppose when so I work with Sportsfile, and we're the official photographers for our Web Summit, so we have a team of 7 photographers here. And then we've another team of 5 editors working this, so it's a big gig for us. But we've been doing this is our 4th year working for Web Summit. We do all our conferences across Hong Kong, New Orleans, which has now moved to Toronto, and the one in Dublin, MoneyConf. So when we get the schedule, we always go to the sports stage and to see who's the big name this year. And it's and that's what we love this. This is our one that we target today. So okay, because it's the one that's most relevant to us. Like we work in the sports business, sports every day of the week. So this is a little bit off the beaten track. So the sports stage is the one.
So you've got your big names already taken now in the sports stage.
I won't beat this.
Finished now.
You just came to see Eoin and the official fight announcement for Eoin and McGregor's dad.
Yeah, we need a photography agency to document
Or
all
hire
things.
Yeah.
I'm in.
Do you want to follow Eoin on his journey to annihilation?
Yeah, we can do the embedded.
One last thing, I was going to ask you about the evolution of the gear that you have. Like, how has it changed in the short period of time that you've been a full-time professional photographer? What's the difference now?
Yeah, so I suppose when I started out like 11 years ago, I used to go to games at my college, somewhat similar, that we'd go to games that was just a matter of producing your set of pictures. If you got 10 nice pictures, 8 to 10 pictures, you were happy. Now it's all about the moment. So it's not about getting the good pictures, it's about getting that moment. Be it the goal that wins the game, the sending off, the tackle, something like that. So that has changed. And the other side of it is the speed of it. Like, there was a time where you could go and do a game in Croke Park and you'd be happy enough going to the press room afterwards, sitting down, editing. But now, unless you have the picture out immediately, then you've missed it, because it's the online world has changed that. And even the likes of the McGregor fight, there was only 8 photographers cage side on that night, and the big thing is to be the first one out. So not alone is there pressure on you to get the picture, but then you've got to be able to get it out as quick as possible. So that's the way it's definitely changed. Technology has changed it, but thankfully we're an agency that invests in technology, that we're always trying to stay ahead of the game. So yeah, that's how it's definitely changed.
Is that just a 4G card, really, ultimately?
It's not just one 4G card, but when you go to the States, you're buying 3 different networks, because you don't know what's going to work on the night. So you're in the T-Mobile arena for a fight like that, and the worst card you can have is a T-Mobile card, because there's no signal for T-Mobile. So you've got to have a T-Mobile and a Verizon and any other networks that you can buy on when you get there, as well as the Wi-Fi, and trying everything, because it's not an excuse to say, oh, I couldn't send a picture. Well, that doesn't work.
It is mad that so much importance in media is placed on video, and there was a thought maybe that photography was going to be a dying art over the last couple of years, and then it just made a comeback when everybody realized that the visual image is still so unbelievably important. It's the type of thing that everybody understands really quickly, and actually it's probably becoming more and more prominent as memes started to take off and become massive traffic drivers. People realized that if I've got a good photograph that can actually become a meme, then I can communicate in many different ways. And I don't know if you guys feel this, but like, it certainly seems like the big media companies, the big publishers, are pushing more photography now than they would have been even 10 years ago.
Yeah, they are. They're looking for more from their photography. So they're looking for more behind the scenes to bring the viewer places they've never seen before. And the still will capture that moment. The video doesn't get that intimate moment, or somebody, even when you see the backstage of fighters getting wrapped up or stuff like that, it's just that deep moment where they're in thought. Video can't capture that. I find they have to really make it slow-mo and start changing the colours and all. Whereas I think the still will capture that a lot more. There's still a place for it, definitely for the pictures. You look through Instagram, I suppose, has helped us an awful lot. Like, videos on Instagram are quite good, but it's that one picture. You look at any big fighter after fights, or soccer players or any player, they'll still go to that one picture. They're not going to put up a video to show this is how I won the game, or the celebration afterwards. They might use it in their stories or whatever, but it's that one picture that's going to get all the likes. So I think sponsors have caught on to that as well. Like, let's get a sports person. Let's instead of hire him to do a photo call, let's buy a space on his Instagram page and put a picture up there. So that has really helped us, I suppose, in a way. The social media, it could have been the end of us because everybody has a phone, but I think it's actually opened a new market for us now.
Yeah. No, totally. At Sportsfile, Steve. Steve, thanks very much for joining us and for taking photographs of Owen before he dies.
Thanks, Kai.
Okay, we're going to move on because obviously we're going to be back here in a couple of minutes with some more good stuff from the Web Summit. But in the meantime, some big stories developing over the last couple of days. Here's Gary Breen talking about Arsenal's increased fitness levels, and also Eddie O'Sullivan on why he thinks Joe Schmidt has already made his mind up about his future.
Well, it's hard to think of a time when Arsenal in recent times were pressing in opposition like they were on Saturday. It's hard to say they're fitter, because you just would think in the modern era over the last number of years they would have had all sorts of nutritionists and
oh no, Joe, they're fitter.
Are they?
They're fitter because it doesn't matter about your nutrition. This is the thing that a lot of probably people won't know. You've got to train in the red zone so that when you play on a Saturday, you're able to execute and you're able to play under extreme conditions, extreme intensity. And I just felt, looking at Arsenal, that training would be so easy that when they did have to go into that red zone in the game, more often than not, they were found wanting. And it's no surprise now that on that incredible 11-game winning run, that the majority of those games Arsenal won in the second half. So that suggests that they have that energy, that desire to go right to the end, and that's impressive. That just shows you the work that's been done on that training ground.
Yeah, it's very evident, because even that Leicester goal, the brilliant end-to-end pitch end Leicester goal, Mesut Ozil, the running he does for that goal, it's selfless, it's powerful. All of it just reeked of a guy who was feeling very fit and very strong. And we saw, similar moments against Liverpool, them winning the ball high up the pitch.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even Mesut Ozil, he has really rejuvenated over the last month or so. And it was a case where, and I can understand the difficulties he was having, that Emery initially didn't play him in his favourite 10 role, the position that Wenger would always play him, to the frustration of the likes of Wilshere, Walcott, Ramsey, who all wanted to play that number 10 role. But no matter how well or how poorly he was playing, he always got the nod. He started this season in under Emery, pushed out to that right wing. Ramsey got the nod at 10. So that was a little kick up the backside that he possibly needed. He's obviously had the disappointment and what's been happening with the national team. But certainly he looks like he's coming into his own again, and a player who influences the game. Not in a way that a lot of Arsenal supporters want, that he's crashing into tackles, but he's not that type. You build a team around him and then get him into the areas where he can show how special he is.
I think he has made up his mind already. That's my first thought, and I'm completely speculating here, so I have no more information than anybody else, obviously. I think he has made up his mind, but for him to give his decision like this week, it would have just been a talking point for the next month, and the games have become secondary. So he's not going to tell us till after, and then he will tell us after November, and that gives then 2 months for us to kick it around, whatever the decision is, and it's dead in the water then by the Six Nations. So this has been managed really well. It's a smart way to do it. You took all the oxygen out of it until you have to. But having said that, let's say he is leaving, and if you were kind of looking for a kind of a steer on this, it struck me as strange when they talked about, I think it was 2 weeks ago, about the strategic plan, and they made a statement that no system is dependent on one person.
That set off alarm bells,
I think that set alarm bells off for people, because it was kind of almost putting the foundations for Joe Schmidt to announce that he is going to be around. So, but look, that's just, again, we're kind of like trying to read between the lines. But I think if he says he's going, I think there's a 2 months before the Six Nations. But I think the thing at the moment is, which is key, is that everything at the moment is all focused on Japan. And I think no matter what he says, the focus will come back on Japan and the World Cup, and it'll turn into, if he's leaving, a chance for him to leave an extraordinary legacy behind. During his time in Ireland, in terms of winning the Grand Slam, beating the All Blacks, and now the cherry on the cake would be a semi-final or better. So I think the lame duck thing will not come into play, because there's too much at stake. Players are not going to, for a second, change their opinion or how they would go about their business. So it's actually be fine. I've only no worries like that in this situation, because the World Cup is a fantastic focal point for everybody. Between now and next September. So I don't see that being an issue at all.
We're back, and thanks very much for joining us this morning on OTB AM, wherever you're watching us, on YouTube, on Twitter and Periscope, and of course on Facebook as well. There was a little bit of reverb earlier on.
Yeah, someone on Twitter, Barry Finnegan, is comparing us to Tame Impala, which, great band, so thank you very much for your compliments, Barry.
The suggestion being that there was a little bit too much reverb. But we fixed it. There were gremlins. It's the first morning. We'll have everything slick as tomorrow.
Yeah, we sure will. They're kind of ruffling about mercilessly down at the back to try and sort that out. But all is good now.
Yeah, we're like the beautiful swan on the top of the water, and the lads, Johnny and Tommy, are like the legs furiously paddling underneath that you can't see.
They're paddling so well because the fact that we're in Lisbon, got into the building and are live on the internet, I think that deserves a round of applause. There's no one to give the round of applause, but somewhere someone is applauding you.
Yeah, we had to break in this morning basically to get in here to be on time or 5 minutes late to start the show. But we made it, and that's the main thing, especially after Owen's behaviour last night. Well, and your inspired behaviour, you inspired Owen's behaviour by bringing him to the crappiest Irish bar.
Yeah, what was that about, Darren?
I was asked where I've been over the last 2 days. I answered honestly. I went to a place where I could see most of the sport I would like to have seen over the last few days. Haven't had as much culture as I would like, but look, I need to save something for my next trip to Lisbon.
Are you an Irish pub guy in every city you go to?
I generally tend to despise those people, but at the same time, I kind of wanted to watch the matches. I wanted to see the FAI Cup.
Did you have a dirty big fry watching one of these matches?
I didn't. I wasn't able for a dirty big fry. The first night we didn't really have time for dinner, and the second night it was like what's the easiest thing on the stomach? Some garlic bread and chicken skewers, I think, is not going to cause too much hassle.
You were late to join your party because you were at the All-Stars, the coronation of Dublin as 7 kings.
Yeah, 7 is a really good number, and I think that it'd be hard to have too much of an argument with the All-Star makeup. I think aside from goalkeeper, there was a lot of talk about that. I was good to actually speak to Rory Beggan about it. He name-checked Cluxton on the stage and said how much of his game is modelled off Cluxton and how big it is for him to be recognised as the best goalkeeper of 2018 in a year in which probably the best goalkeeper ever to lace up a pair of boots is still playing. He was really interesting in the way he spoke about winning the All-Star and what it meant and what Monaghan are trying to do going forward. I think it was their highest ever representation in an All-Star team. So brilliant year for him and brilliant year for them. But the fact that Cluxton will be regarded as the guy who started the evolution of the role of the goalkeeper, but Beggan will be the man who brings it on another level because he is adding stuff to the game that you maybe wouldn't think it would be Cluxton's strong points at this point of his career.
So you're saying he's better than Cluxton now?
I'm saying I have no real arguments with him getting the 2018 All-Star. At the same time, I don't understand how Cluxton hasn't got one in 5 years.
Yeah, fair point. Your piece with Brian Fenton was really good as well on Friday night. Like, I think it's possible for us to accept that these Dublin players can be extremely humble and extremely interesting in how they speak. And I thought some of the words he had to say about Brian Howard were just so lovely on Friday night.
What Fenton said?
That Fenton said. He's just so happy to see Howard there. He says he couldn't wish for it to happen to a nicer person for him to win his first All-Star in his first year, in his breakout year as kind of on our national consciousness as a footballer. And to see 2 Brians from the same club pick up 2 awards in midfield, even if you're not from Dublin, it's a pretty cool sight to see. And 2 extremely humble guys. And like even Jim Gavin, when he was speaking on the TV on Friday.
Yeah, so Owen was presenting on Saturday. He was devastated when he heard that it was the day after the All-Stars because he assumed that he was going to get to go, but you took the one spot that Off the Ball had. Just wanted to get that in there before he got it in.
Sorry, Owen.
Forewarned, forearmed and all that. But, well, far more important thing happened on Saturday was Johnny Cooper was in as part of the All-Star panel. So every year after the All-Stars, we drag 3 of the All-Stars in. Sometimes they're in great form, sometimes they're in a little bit worse for wear, and sometimes they don't even show up. That has happened over the years that various people have been like, yeah, no problems. What time is it at 2 o'clock? Yeah, that'll be fine. I'll be grand by 2 o'clock. And they're like, just...
Still in coppers.
Exactly. The rollover has happened. But I don't know if you remember during the summer, there was a very clear birth given to the idea of Johnny Cooper as Sergio Ramos. An idea which is completely stolen and ripped off by a former Tyrone footballer writing a column.
6 months later, 6 months after
that. Yeah, after it had been like, yeah, that's good, that's tested, that works. It's disappeared enough now, I can bring it back and claim it for my own. So, Owen Mulligan, we have your number. He's calling you out. And in the office on Saturday, Owen, in fairness, has a pair of balls and got them out for everybody to see. What happened?
I just mentioned the Sergio Ramos comparisons, assuming that Johnny Cooper isn't listening to us in the middle of the summer. Like, as most inter-county players said, they turn off the GAA section when it comes to GAA in the summer. And he was like, oh yeah, I heard those comparisons. You started it. So straight away I was like, okay, well, I've been kind of buried here immediately. So it turns out that Johnny Cooper knows exactly who started the Sergio Ramos comparisons, and knows exactly who to attribute the quotes to, and knows exactly who was brutally stolen from, which was me. So I'm the victim here, and thankfully Johnny Cooper knew that.
They're well aware of everything that's going on, and you'd be more foolish to believe them when they say they have no interest. These guys search their names on Twitter. They know what's being said.
Do they?
A lot of them are told not to do it because when it's negative, it can have an impact on you. A lot of people are advised, if you've had a bad day, maybe don't go on Twitter. It's not going to make you feel any better if people are slating you or having a go. But there's a perverse interest in finding out what people are saying. Even it takes an awful lot of maturity to not care about what your critics think, even if they are an egg on Twitter or if they are a broadcaster in a studio. When someone says your name and if someone has an opinion on what you're trying to do, some of it actually might be constructive. So they might try to glean some information from what some of the more well-rounded pundits, what some of the former players might be saying. But the idea that they go to ground and ignore the media is complete BS.
So I'm going to be interviewing the Benfica triumvirate that we have. One's a player, one's the CEO, and one is their head of the youth academy. And the head of the youth academy yesterday was just talking about social media, and in light of the Pogba suggestion that Manchester United definitely wanted to sign him because of the following that he had, we were talking about this, and he was making the point that for so many players, the response on social media outweighs the value of the response to the coach, and they have to fight that constantly. So social media, you score a goal in a 3-1 win, social media goes, you're an absolute genius, look at you, you're amazing, you did that back heel, what a fantastic achievement for you. And the coaches are like, didn't track back, didn't defend at the corner, didn't actually pick up his man when he was supposed to, got away with it, and we win 3-1. He's like, what are you talking about? Everybody says I'm amazing, and here you are trying to bring me down. So there's definitely two sides to the whole being puffed up, being a pat in the back, kick in the ass type thing. So an interesting little dynamic that I think the players need to be aware of.
I think at any level of high performance, if you're in a sphere where it's going to attract a lot of attention, I would avoid it. My natural sense would be most of it will be negative. There might be 5% that's good. And even on days where you have a good day on the pitch and there is an awful lot of praise, you will still get hung up about the three people who will pick out the things you didn't do. I think players would be, and I know they do it, but there is kind of an insanity in looking at your bad press and looking at the stuff. And it's not even the press, it's more so the uneducated people who just want to have cheap shots and digs on Twitter. I think they would be very aware of, like you mentioned Cooper, the Sergio Ramos stuff, but the players are also quite intelligent and they don't feel like they're being picked on in aspects like that. I know from talking to the Dublin players, there is a perceived thing among some of the loudest Dublin fans that off the ball has a bias against Dublin. The players don't buy into that. They don't believe that. They know that they're treated very, very fairly in the media. And even though Cooper was able to recognise that you maybe instigated is there comparison between Cooper and Ramos?
It was all good. It was all good for him.
At the same time, he probably looks at it and says, Sergio Ramos is a very successful guy and he goes out there every week and does everything he wants for his team. He doesn't care if 100,000 people think that he's a dirty player. He gets the job done and he has the medals to do it.
It helps they were in college together. If they weren't, I wonder would he have been quite so forgiving?
He would have. He knew what
also,
I meant.
he knows you're getting the head poked off you by Tony McGregor, so he doesn't have to do it himself.
That is also a very, very good point. If you can watch somebody kind of sustain those sort of injuries, then you're probably going to be a little bit softer on them than you ordinarily would be.
Oh man, I see what's coming in your future. I can be gentle and the bigger man in this instance.
Apparently, Johnny Cooper is training Tony McGregor, so.
Here, the rest of the All-Stars, Cian Lynch was the other breakout star.
Cian Lynch, I said this the other day and I almost felt guilty saying it, but I almost enjoyed Limerick's All-Ireland win as much as I enjoyed Dublin's All-Ireland win, which might give you some sense of Dublin fans' fatigue with the success. But at the same time, by reverse, when it goes away, we'll all feel stupid for taking it.
Dublin fans are bored of their success and think Kildare are one of the weaker counties, one of the so-called weaker counties.
That's not my most glorious moment there when I seem to insult all of Kildare. I will retract it and say Kildare are a big county, although they're probably a decade off winning a Leinster title.
I missed that last bit, sorry.
They're
still a
decade
off winning
Leinster.
Leinster.
It's probably true though, isn't it? That has certainly got boring, and I'm sure you're bored with that a long time ago. To say though that you almost enjoyed somebody else's All Ireland win as much as your own is one hell of a statement.
No, it's the infectious enthusiasm of Limerick. It's what it means to the people of Limerick. And I spoke to Lynch and I asked, was there like a defining moment that sticks in his head as special above all else, or gave him a sense of what sport can do in people's lives and the joy it can bring complete strangers. And he said that they went to an addiction clinic the Wednesday before the All-Stars, and it was the first moment where he really appreciated exactly what sport can do for people who are at the lowest point of their lives, who are facing their most difficult times. And he said the fact that they were so happy just to see them, and the fact that it brought these people who were in a really, really, really bad place, it brought them solace, it brought them happiness. He said, above all else, there was the moment with his mum, there was the moment in the dressing room when they walked off the train, there was that wall of noise they were greeted with, but it was seeing these complete strangers take so much happiness from their achievements at a point where they were at their lowest. That really brought home from what sports mean to people.
He's gifted in his ability to communicate in an understated manner. It's like he's the anti-Conor McGregor, really, when you think about it.
Yeah, it's true. Like his acceptance speech was fantastic as well on Friday night. There's humility there as well in Keaton Lynch and in all those Limerick players. Just so modest. Like that line about not much runs through my head at the best of times was a hilarious line. Obviously, far from the truth, given the way he plays hurling and given the way he's been successfully able to transition into a midfielder, which we're not giving him enough credit for, by the way. Like, this is a guy who's won Hurler of the Year in a new position. His first year playing in that position, it's pretty good.
It's not bad. We'll come back to the Keane Lynch saga and the Keane Lynch story. I've no doubt that it's going to be in all of the end-of-year montages in various different forms. I want to move on. We're going to be speaking with Angela Ruggiero in just a moment. But first, here's David Conn of The Guardian speaking on last night's football show about why the Football Association are to blame for James McLean.
To be honest, I just find it very depressing. And I don't mean I find it depressing that James McLean and Nemanja Matic have chosen not to wear a poppy. That is completely their own right to do that. And wearing a poppy, we were always taught is a fragile reminder of peace because it's the flowers that grew on the muddy, awful battlefields of the First World War. Mm-hmm. And, gradually in this country, it started to become some kind of compulsory, moment where you're almost a traitor to some people if you don't wear one. And I'm afraid that the FA themselves have encouraged this by, going to such a conflict with FIFA about it and insisting that there had to be poppies, they had to have the right to wear poppies on the shirts. And FIFA's point was, that this is it's a political symbol, and they had a huge argument that it isn't a political symbol, but it starts to look very political, doesn't it, when someone like James McLean says he doesn't want to wear a poppy and gets maybe not a load of abuse, I don't know how much it is, but he certainly gets some abuse. And abusing someone for not wearing a poppy, that in itself is just not in the spirit of what it's supposed to be about. And I don't know whether you and your your listeners and viewers understand where we've got to in this country over the poppy, but it is starting to become something that's almost compulsory at this time of year.
All right, so we are back. Angela Ruggiero has joined us through the Lisbon traffic this morning. Apparently it's quite bad out there.
A lot of fun.
So you've had a really interesting career as somebody who is very high profile as a hockey player, and then obviously also somebody who's been involved as part of the various athletes commissions, as somebody who becomes a spokesperson. Mm-hmm. I'm always interested in that transformation from somebody who is an athlete to somebody who ends up in the administrative side on behalf of the athletes. It's not an obvious career move for people to want to be the person who says, actually, things need to change here. A lot of people are reluctant to do that, but you weren't. Where did that come from?
Yeah, I think, I had an amazing career. I got to compete in 4 Olympics and won a gold medal for Team USA in hockey, and my life is fundamentally different because I had the opportunity to play sports, so I wanted to make sure I could pass that on, give that back, make sure other athletes had that same sort of opportunity. And the other thing is I was able to get a great education at Harvard University because I played sports, and having that sort of in parallel track with my sports career, I think opened my eyes up to all the other opportunities out there for athletes. I mean, we're people at the end of the day. We're going to have a second career. We're going to have to move on, and now I'm in the tech industry, and so having just wanting to give back, because I was afforded so many opportunities. And then two, just education gave me, I think, the power inside, I think, to go and start my next career.
We'll talk about tech in a moment, because obviously we are at the Web Summit and it would be silly not to. But can we talk a little bit about the IOC and WADA and your involvement? What's the natural career progression at that point, and why did you get involved at that level? What were you trying to achieve, or what did you want to achieve?
Yeah, so there's 15 athletes. The IOC is about 100 members or so. 15 of those members are athletes. So I was elected in the Vancouver Olympics by my fellow athletes to serve 8 years and represent their interests, and that gives you an exposure to the broader Olympic world. There's hundreds of national Olympic committees, different federations. I got to see and serve on many committees that are organizing the games. I was the chief strategy officer of the LA Olympic bid, who recently won the games for 2028. So I got this amazing education, if you will, in international sport through representing the athletes. And again, I put my hand up because I wanted to make sure that, as an athlete, something as simple as having tickets for your family. I mean, there's these little things that I think we could do better at supporting our athletes with, that I wanted to be a part of.
Because so frequently you hear Olympians after the experience, if they haven't been successful, they can be quite disillusioned by the fact that the whole jamboree happens, and it happens because of their hard work, sweat, toil and tears, but actually they're kind of forgotten about in the rush to make sure that the TV schedule is right, that the TV deal is right, that the sponsors are getting what they're supposed to be getting.
Yeah, there's actually a lot of depression by athletes. They go, and people don't talk about it enough, that you are at your peak, the world is watching, and everyone's perpetuating that. They're almost putting blinders on you so that you can be focused and successful. And what they're not doing is, I think, preparing you for your next stage in life. So when all that fanfare goes away, the lights get shut off, a lot of athletes are left for the first time thinking about, what am I going to do now? So I've been encouraging, and the Athletes Commission, we've been setting up different athlete career program initiatives to help athletes think about that while they're competing, while they have the world stage, while they have sort of the world at their fingertips, because they can then talk about what their passion is outside of sport, and the right support could hopefully come in advance of retirement.
It's interesting that you say that, given your background and given your Harvard education, because looking at it on the outside looking in, correct me if I'm wrong here, but certainly when it comes to top-level athletes in colleges in the United States, it's sports first, and then it's the lecture hall second, very much so. Whereas in your case, I'd imagine, just by dint of the fact that it's Harvard, it was very much two parallel tracks, as you've already described, two glass balls, as one of our Dublin friends back home describes it as, two very important parts of your life that are both as important as one another, that perhaps doesn't pervade culture in other colleges in the United States.
Yeah, and I think if we're realistic, you're going to play sports for a fraction of your life. But so again, I'm a huge advocate of getting more athletes, not necessarily have to go to Harvard, but value your education. Put coaches and people around you that can enable you. Maybe you're not getting a degree because you play professional, but at least you're encouraged to think about life after sport. And I was able to do that, fortunately, with my Harvard degree, and I feel so blessed because of that. And I didn't retire till I was 31, but in the back of my head, I knew I was going to retire. And most athletes, honestly, they're competing, and the day they're done, they go, all right, now what? And then you're middle-aged, and that's why we get pushed into coaching or pushed into go be a general manager, when in reality these most athletes can do many more things with their lives.
You'd wonder as well where the competitive edge comes from. And I don't know, in your career, do you feel competitive? Do you feel that you've taken what you took from your hockey career and say, right, I'm channeling that part of my brain that gives me my competitive edge into my career?
Totally. I want to win at everything. It's just the nature of an elite athlete. Like, you're hyper competitive with yourself, with others, and now I'm channeling that into my career. And I'm not going to have the same high. I'm not going to have millions of people watching or hundreds of thousands, in venue yelling, and you're not going to have the same adrenaline rush. But in business, I think there's so many parallels. The lessons you learn in sport can absolutely be applied in life, and why I think athletes are really, really great hires. You've learned about teamwork and goal setting and perseverance, and it's okay to get criticized. Your coach, has yelled at you your whole career. You're not gonna. So I think we actually make really good employees, and to your point, if you can channel that energy in the right way, I think it could be, really beneficial.
What is the Sports Innovation Lab? That's what you're here to talk about.
Yeah, we're a market research company that derives insights and analytics for the sports tech community. So a Gartner or a Forrester or a Bloomberg terminal, if you will, we're at our core a technology product that's taking thousands of inputs on all the tech products that are in the sports industry and making it simple and easy to understand.
So who are your consumers? The teams or individuals?
We service teams, leagues. The technology is probably half our clients. The Intels, the Googles, the IBMs we've all done work with. Agencies now that are getting into sports have to understand the tech that can enable their brands or their athletes. Investors now, there's a lot of capital being deployed in this space. So we're a data analytics intelligence service powered by software, and anyone can use us.
Okay, so you are actually proprietary software. You don't work with other people's software. It's like...
We build our own software, and if you think about it, we've first mapped what the sports tech industry looks like, and there's over 4,000 companies to date that we've identified that do something, whether it's on the athlete in performance, whether it's in the venue that powers that smart stadium of the future, whether it's new media, VR, AR, volumetric video. There's all these new ways to distribute, create content. That could be esports as a new, obviously, hotbed. In the US, we talk about sports betting. I can go on and on, but the point is it's accelerating in terms of new companies or big tech companies that are now saying, look, we have a great capability or a processor or a chip, let's put that into sports. So this industry itself, the sports tech industry, is blossoming, and we're at the center of it, digesting it, and giving an objective view on what that market and what those products look like.
Do you feel you're at the tip of the iceberg at the moment, or that is it like a massive avenue that's yet to be explored to its full potential?
Yet to be explored. That's the exciting part. There's so many companies out there that understand, look, if I can power an elite athlete and prove out my technology when the world is watching, I can service healthcare. I can service everyone else. If I can prove out my technology in a venue when 100,000 people are watching, I can power a smart city. So all these applications, we know people love the platform of sports, and obviously there's a lot that are going just in it for sports. But what we're finding where the real dollars are being deployed and the real opportunity is using sport as this test bed or proving ground, if you will, for these other adjacent verticals.
To teach people how to use it and then say, oh, look, this also works in the rest of your life.
That's why we're seeing major technology companies get in the game, sponsor the World Cup, sponsor the Olympics. They don't just want their logo on the pitch now. They want to actually power those and operationalize those games themselves. And so it's only going to take off from here. Again, we've just scratched the surface. I think in terms of mapping that ecosystem, 4,000 companies, we add, I'd say 20 or 30 every day. And if you even look at the startup level, everyone is trying to produce. I mean, who doesn't want to work in tech and in sports and find the next great product that the world will be using?
No, it's true. I did want to ask you about WADA and what's going on at the moment. As somebody kind of you sat on one of the boards at WADA. I couldn't quite work out which one it was. You were the IOC's athlete representative on the board of WADA. Is that did I get that right?
I was one of the athlete reps on the WADA Foundation board.
What's the foundation board?
It's basically the large board, not the executive, but the broader-based board that helps dictate the rules around anti-doping.
So, what do you think about what's going on at the moment with WADA?
I mean, I think everyone's just looking. My take is, I think WADA was created in 2000, has done a lot to date, but can do more. And the athletes see that. I think the NOCs, National Olympic Committees, the IOC, everyone's saying, look, how do we take this governing body and move it to the next level? Whether that's separation of powers, whether that's setting up new structures for testing, which the IOC just set up. People are saying, what's the next progression to make sure that we don't have another situation like we saw in Sochi? And no one, I think, was happy that happened. It's I think in the point in time where we're looking now and saying, what can we do better?
It's interesting because you obviously understand the power of the Olympic movement from what it's supposed to be all the way through to what happened in Sochi. It seems as if any involvement in WADA and any crossover in involvement between the people who run the IOC and run WADA doesn't make any sense, that there needs to be a complete separation. That WADA, although the IOC is very key in bringing it into being, needs to be completely independent of all the sports. However they get the funding, maybe it's the TV companies who pay for it, I don't know where the funding comes from, but does it make sense? Does it make any sense anymore for the IOC to have any involvement in WADA?
Well, the tricky part about WADA is half of the representatives comes from the sports movement. So you want people that understand the sports movement, have important roles to play in the sports movement, and half come from the government. And the same thing would be said about the government officials. You want them to actually understand the context of sport and have some, maybe they're sports ministers, etc. So the tricky thing will be figuring out if we have complete separation, who are the right individuals that understand the sports movement and are completely independent. Are they retired, perhaps? Did they previously serve and they renounced all their roles in order to serve on WADA? And on the government side, it's the same thing. You want people that can actually articulate in a detailed way the anti-doping movement. So that, I think, is the question that people are paying.
Do you believe we can have drug-free sport?
Sorry?
Do you believe that we can have drug-free sport?
To be honest, no. I think that there's always an incentive to be successful. I think you could have less doping in sport, but I think something like, gambling, I think, and prop betting. There's an incentive now for athletes to throw a pitch, throw a face-off. There's an incentive to cheat with doping. Maybe, in my sport, ice hockey, okay, I could have been a little bit quicker, but is that going to necessarily mean my team's going to win? No. So you might have less risk in a team sport versus an individual sport. And I could go on and on about like risk tolerance, but I don't think you'll ever fully eliminate it. The problem is the dopers have so much more to gain by doping right now, and the system is always playing catch up. There's going to have to be a tremendous amount of money and support to get the system ahead of the cheaters who have more to gain.
Yeah.
And right now it's trailing. We do a lot. We spend a lot in anti-doping to figure out what's already happened as opposed to planning 10 years in advance.
Yeah. And how successful is that in terms of figuring out what's already happening? Is it just a constant battle that's always being lost?
It's always a constant battle. I don't think it's always being lost. I think, with each advancement on the anti-doping side, this group, the dopers, then have to find a new way to get ahead. So there's more investment here. But I mean, it's the nature. Unfortunately, I just think as the stakes get higher in sport, athletes, administrators, and let's take the burden completely off the athlete. A lot of times it's the coaches that are saying, "Here, take this."
Yeah.
And so that's the thing I would love to see is more shared responsibility. If your athlete is caught doping, you're ejected for life, just like that athlete. I think that the rules and procedures could actually change the way that the athlete moves on, we just bring another athlete in and the system continues to be perpetuated.
Yeah, for sure. That's a great idea. At Sports iLab is Sports Innovation Lab on Twitter.
At Sports iLab, yeah, we're looking at the globe, just trying to help the world better understand the trends and the products and what's happening in this space, because it's very exciting and I think has enormous impact given the visibility of sport.
Absolutely. Angela, thanks very much for joining us here, and enjoy the rest of your time at Web Summit. That's pretty much all we've got time for on this morning's show, so thanks very much for being with us. Just follow the hashtag OTB AM. We'll be live tomorrow, of course, from the Web Summit in Lisbon at 7:45 again. Until then, good luck.
OTB AM.
Thanks to Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a dedicated call centre.